Hello and welcome to Called Big Sports, where today we are kind of going to try to take a bit of a step back and, not lose our minds over the Jazz on a three-game losing streak right now. But that being said, Boston, amazing team. Nets, good team on a back-to-back. I mean, Kevin Durant is Kevin Durant. And it's a long road trip, which doesn't make the Charlotte loss less disappointing. And it's still definitely a concerning loss. And you've got an important game against the Mavericks coming up if you're the Jazz, but they're still probably going to get the 4 or the 5 seed. I'm leaning towards 5 right now, but like I said, we're stepping back. We're going to talk a bit about Quin Snyder today. There were some rumors that came out this week that he is a candidate for the Lakers job coming up in this offseason, which would make a lot of sense. They're trying to shake things up there. Not necessarily a lot that you can do with the players. So getting rid of the coach Frank Vogel would be maybe a good move there. And Dale mentioned that we could maybe talk about if the Jazz do poorly in the playoffs, should the Jazz even look to just move on from Coach Q, regardless of what's happening. And so I'm sure you guys all have a lot of thoughts about this. Please put it down in the comments. And Dale, kind of give me what your thoughts were, and then I will see if I agree or disagree.
Cool. Yeah. So to start off, I've been a fan of Quin Snyder since he was hired with the Jazz. Every time people have come up and said he should be fired, I've not agreed with them. But here's a situation where, and we can discuss whether if we had the call, like if we could make the decision to keep him or fire him, what would we do? But I think there's a decent chance that if the Jazz have a disappointing playoff run, that Coach Snyder is going to be fired. Because if you look at his playoff history, I think we've had 1 year where the Jazz exceeded expectations, where they won in the first round, and then I think got swept by the Rockets in the second, and everyone expected the Jazz to be a first round exit. And then ever since then, the Jazz have kind of underperformed. Last year, we kind of had the expectation of the Jazz are making the conference finals. The year before that, we had the expectation of, hey, we're good enough to get to the second round. Let's get to the second round. That's kind of been where we've been. And so it's been kind of a disappointing playoff record for Coach Quinn. I think he's been an amazing regular season coach, but if he underperforms again this year, I think there's a really good chance that maybe they won't fire him, but they're probably going to have that discussion.
No, and I think you bring us some interesting points there, right? Because when you take a look at it, like Coach Snyder's 55 years old, and you've got only 2 more coaches that have been with their team longer than he's been with the Jazz, and that's Eric Spoelstra and Greg Popovich. And so taking a look at it, it's like, yes, at some point that discussion has to be had, right? Like, I don't, and I guess, I mean, maybe it doesn't, but since we do look, I don't know how many years we had. This is really okay. Coach Sloan, there we. um, that was sad. Jerry Sloan. I don't know how many years he was with the team, and so that does show that the Jazz, as a franchise, are willing to stick with good, high quality coaches who have not won a championship, and let them coach for a while. However, when you take a look at it, it does still. I mean, like Coach Q hasn't made a conference finals, and we've also moved on from the Millers. So what is kind of Ryan and Ashley Smith? What is their perspective on this whole thing? I personally don't think you pulled the trigger yet. I think that he's got 3 or 4 years left on his deal. I think is kind of what we had pieced together, probably 3. And I think more so you look at not renewing his contract if he doesn't have success over the next few years. Because this discussion, and we talked a bit about this before the Cat Pod, happened a lot with Mike Budenholzer in Milwaukee, who just got a 3-year contract extension and is now going to be in Milwaukee for a long time if he chooses to be. It would be hard for me to see him getting fired. But you look at it and everyone's like, oh, can he do it? Can he do it? What is he capable of doing? And then he goes and wins the title, and all complaints, all of people's concerns go away. In a year where they won the title, because let's be frank, Kevin Durant had his foot on the line. Like, I don't want to try to put asterisks next to titles. for the Bucks. I do kind of do it for the Suns getting there, and I just need to do a better job of just condoning teams' wins and or not condoning, just complimenting them on their wins. I do need to do better at that personally, but like if KD's foot isn't on the line, Mike's out of a job. Like we were looking at a different coach in Milwaukee this year. And so what's going to happen? What happens? Let's say Conley doesn't get injured in game 5, and Donovan doesn't get injured. Is Mike out of a job, and did Coach Q just get an even longer contract extension because all of a sudden the Jazz are NBA champions? Like, there's dominoes that can go just either way, and right now, like the Jazz need a lot of those dominoes to fall in their direction. I don't even know if that was worded correctly. They need a lot of things to go right to be able to win the title this year, but it's possible. And so that's why I'm not necessarily a fan of at the end of this season, unless they get swept in the first round, or gentleman's sweep, talking about firing Coach Q. Since when we're looking at it, and the Jazz could actually end up playing the Golden State Warriors with Steph Curry and Draymond Green and Klay Thompson, like in round 1. I mean, I think the Jazz are great, but I can't guarantee a win there. And should Coach Q get fired for losing to one of the best teams of all time? Obviously missing some pieces that they've had in the past, but still just an amazing and talented roster.
And I agree with you. Like in my opinion, they probably shouldn't, unless there's just some like golden coach, which I can't think of one, that becomes available, that fits the roster perfectly, which I don't know if there's many coaches better than Quin Snyder out there. So like if something comes up, everyone in the Jazz thinks it's the most perfect fit, and we've had a disappointing playoff this year. If that does end up happening, then that's going to happen. To your point, if the Jazz make it to the conference finals, make it to the finals, even if they like lose in either of those, Quin Snyder, like I think there's a really low chance Quin Snyder loses his job. I will say, if the Jazz do underperform this year, everyone knows Donovan Mitchell's primary goal is to win. He kind of has the mindset of, hey, if I can win here, let's win here. Everyone knows, though, that if the Jazz aren't putting a roster around him where he thinks he can win a championship, Donovan Mitchell's probably going to be open to leaving Utah if it comes to that situation. So, like, I don't think Donovan Mitchell's at the point where he's going to demand a trade anytime soon. But we've heard reports of him not being happy in Utah, thinking about leaving. And I think, like, where there's smoke, there's fire. And so whether that's several years down the road, if it comes to the point where, like, firing Coach Quinn gives the Jazz a better chance of keeping Donovan happy for whatever reason, I think that's a movement that the Jazz front office would make. I think they would prioritize keeping Donovan Mitchell around as long as possible, rather than keeping a coach that we know like is a really good coach and we know what to expect from.
There is one coach, if they came available in the offseason, who I could see coming to Utah. And I still wouldn't be like, yes, get rid of them for Coach Q. So get rid of Coach Q for them. I wouldn't be horrendously upset if they made the decision. And after O'Neal. This week, yes, Shaquille O'Neal, 100%. Yes, just bring Shaq. No, if for whatever reason Pat Riley down in Miami decided to say, hey, to make Jimmy Butler happy, I'm getting rid of Erik Spoelstra. And I am going off of like a skirmish that I was expecting to see like punches thrown by what I saw on social media. And then I Googled it and like, yeah, you don't want that to happen on the sideline. But it kind of felt like people were hyping it up. I was disappointed. It was not as physical as I really wanted to see when I looked it up. But I mean, Dwayne Wade being a part owner here, I'm assuming Wade has a really good relationship with Spoelstra, worked with him for a long time. Like, Spoelstra is a really good coach. And if he somehow became available and made it to Utah, I could see that being a positive change. But to your point, like, Coach Q is a top 5 coach in the NBA. Strongly believe that. Don't ask me to make a list right now, but he's a top 5 coach in the NBA. And overall, I just don't see, unless you have like a top 7 or 8 come available, I don't see moving on from him right now being a good option. And like I mean, obviously, a lot of the reason why this is being discussed is because the Jazz are doing a bit poorly this year, and due to playoff success in the past, right? But like we said, also said, if the Jazz all of a sudden go on a run, like this conversation dies. This is truly just kind of like the ebbs and flows of an 82 game regular season that we are just experiencing right now.
And this is like you mentioned, Quin Snyder's being like talked about as being a Lakers potential hire. I've seen articles. I haven't seen the other teams, but I've seen articles that other teams are looking to hire him as well. That may be looking for a coach. So there's a chance. Like if I were Quin Snyder and the Lakers called me, I would at least talk to them. Like one, it's LA. Two, like as a coach, it has to be an awesome opportunity to be able to coach with LeBron and AD, and so like, and he can decide what the best opportunity is for him. But if I were him, I would at least like talk to them about it. So if there's multiple teams calling him and someone like the conversations happen where he decides it's best for him to move, there's a chance where the Jazz don't even fire him and he just leaves, and the Jazz are looking for a coach anyway. So
yeah,
in that case, I think the Jazz should talk to Pat Riley, get him to be the coach, and then talk to Phil Jackson and Mike D'Antoni and get them to be his assistants, and then we'd be golden.
Oh my gosh. That would make for an interesting offseason. I am seeing that the Spurs are apparently also listed as a rumored destination for him in the offseason. He's worked with in both LA with the Lakers and in San Antonio with the Spurs. I could definitely see Popovich retiring now that he's the winningest coach in NBA history. Right? So like I'll be interested to see, like, Coach Q could not be coaching for the Jazz this upcoming season, just because he gets some really good offers. And while San Antonio, I feel like would be more of like, hey, I have a really good relationship with this city and with this organization. If he goes to San Antonio, I think it shows that the Jazz maybe kind of pushed him away, just because he's not going to be competing for a title anytime soon in San Antonio. If he went to LA, that discussion could still be like he just saw a really good opportunity to work with LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and to like have a chance at a title, be at as much as Jazz fans hate to say it, a top 2 franchise of all time in the league. Like we just sometimes we have to acknowledge that the Lakers are successful. But it'll be interesting. My money's on Coach Q coaching the team next year. Like, if he's not, I do think there's probably some organizational pressure to get him out. But hey, like, we're obviously not in the front office. We're not in the locker room. We don't know what's going on 100%. But I do lean towards seeing Snyder still coaching the Jazz at the beginning of next season.
And I think that's likely. I think we may have to come back to this take when the playoffs are over, and like I feel like things could change. Like we have less than 7 games left in the season,
something like that.
If the Jazz get swept in the first round, a lot can change in like 11 games.
Yeah, and that's true. And the Jazz really need to not fall to the 6th seed. Golden State in round 1. Like when I was talking about like, oh, is the 6th seed maybe better than since like I'm kind of rambling here. Like, but 6th seed against Memphis, I could see you arguing like that's good for the Jazz. But now it's not going to be 6th seed v Memphis. It would be 6th seed v Golden State, and I would prefer to not see Golden State. Like having to make it through Golden State and Phoenix is already why I don't think the Jazz can make it to the finals this year. It's definitely possible, but I really don't want to see Golden State in round 1. So please let us know your takes down in the comments. Are we crazy to talk about Coach Q leaving? Do you think he's here to stay for the long run? Do you think the Jazz should just fire him as is and not even wait to see if another team is going to pick him up? So let us know whatever you think in the comments, and go Jazz.